the danger is also lurking for Borussia Dortmund. See what I did here? In terms of Jude Bellingham. What a wonderful tournament he's been playing. And Liverpool look like they're going to go in hard. Really hard. They're one of many clubs that are trying to go in hard for this player. PSG, remind me of the name of the Qatari landlord that they have sitting on their board in Paris, El Khalifa, I think, right? He issued some statements about them, being obviously interested in Bellingham as well, and that in the end of the day, it's up to the Borussia Dortmund to decide who they're going to sell him to. I thought that was actually quite interesting, which makes me think that PSG is going to probably try to outbid whatever anyone else is going to offer, simply because they can. The question then, of course, is what does Jude Bellingham want, right? And have we even asked what Borussia Dortmund want? Do they even want to sell the player next summer, right? Or do they even have control over the situation anymore? Are they going to just go and sell Jude Bellingham for 130 to 150 million euros and, notch that as another success on the transfer market? Borussia Dortmund, of course, like to win the transfer market. They don't want to win titles. Their titles are to sell the players for the highest price, it almost seems. It just seems like when I talk to people on location in Dortmund, they were not actually willing to sell Jude Bellingham next summer. But then there's all these reports, and these reports always come from somewhere, right? These are not stories that are made up. We both work in this industry. We both understand how this works. And we both understand why these stories get leaked. And judging by that, it really does seem like Jude Bellingham is ready for another step, because this is essentially where this is coming from. So here's the question that I have for you, because you probably know this a little bit better. And we both have lots of friends and people who work in and around Liverpool. Can you actually see Liverpool spend 130 to 150 million euros on Jude Bellingham? Because I still struggle with that notion. I mean, Liverpool don't even have a sporting director at the moment.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, actually. That's the kind of issue that's what I keep coming back to be perfectly honest with you. The Liverpool links make a lot of sense because, on paper, they're a great club, don't get me wrong. Any player would love to play there. They're a very ambitious club. They've got a German head coach who has links to Borussia Dortmund. They like to sign young players. They give them game time. It's a great sporting project. So you can understand why Jamal Musiala might be interested in moving there. But the big issue here, as you just said there, is that Liverpool just can't afford to sign players with the same degree as their rivals. Not just in terms of a transfer fee, which I agree with you at the moment, seems to me like it's a little out their ballpark. Although having said that, they do have a habit of kind of saving their pennies and then going all in on big players to a large extent. They did that with Van Dijk, central defender. They kind of broke records with him. They've done that with Nunez as well. And when push comes to shove, they can go out and just drop a lot of money on players, which they obviously did for the Porto winger in January, whose name now completely I've lost as well. Actually, I can't remember his name. There we go. Yeah, Diaz. Sorry. So they have shown that when they want to be, they can be quite ruthless in the transfer window. But for the most part, a lot of these players were players that had some interest from other clubs, but they weren't like the kind of top tier, hot project kind of players who 5 or 6 super clubs want to sign, and I think kind of a real pertinent example here is Erling Haaland. Liverpool were constantly linked with Erling Haaland, but even Jurgen Klopp was quite happy to admit this on record, saying, look, we're not even at the table when it comes to signing this guy, because Manchester City can offer him the kind of transfer fees that Liverpool can only dream of, really, to a large extent. Now, Haaland's situation was a little different because his transfer fee was extremely lowered because of the minimum fee release clause that he had. So basically, it was a bidding war to see who could offer him the most wages. I don't think Bellingham's going to be the same to that extent, but it'll even out in the same way because his transfer fee will keep going up and up and up, and he's obviously going to demand wages that every club will compete over. So I think, and then of course even if Liverpool can match what the likes of Real Madrid or PSG or Manchester City can offer, as you kind of alluded to there, off the field they're a little all over the place at the minute. It's easy to forget that that first half of the season was pretty disastrous for them on the pitch. There's lots of talk about whether Jurgen Klopp will be sticking around. I'm not really expecting him to leave by any means, but I'm speaking to quite a lot of people behind the scenes, and from what I can tell, we talked about this last week when we were talking about Sven Mislintat possibly moving there. It seems to me as though their entire kind of, not the entire department in terms of recruitment's moving on, but a lot of the kind of big names are moving on, possibly to other Premier League sides. And of course, there's the fact that they might not even have the same owners next season. So kind of get the impression that Liverpool kind of have to get their ducks in a row before they can start talking about moving for a player like Jude Bellingham. And for the most part, I still kind of believe that he as a player hasn't really made any big suggestions that he wants to leave. I was actually speaking to a sporting director in German football today about Bellingham, and they were saying to me that they're still convinced that he'll probably stick around next season because he's a smart guy. He knows he's getting really good game time at Dortmund, and if he was to move to one of these big Premier League clubs, despite how well he's doing this season, there still will be questions about whether he has to kind of share game time with other players. And we were here once before about Jadon Sancho. He was considered as impressive a talent. He was considered as much needed by the big clubs in England and I guess are in Europe. And the slightest wobble and he's on the bench, and that's all she wrote about him. So the only other thing I would really add to that is that I think the market in the summer will also be affected by the fact that it looks as though Declan Rice will be moving on from West Ham. West Ham have been holding out for the last 2 or 3 seasons. Don't want to sell him, but it seems as though they've kind of accepted that he's going to have to move on. They've accepted they're going to have to accept a certain fee for him, and there's probably going to be a bidding war for his services as well. And although he's a slightly different player from Bellingham, he also kind of fills a lot of the same positions and roles as Bellingham. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of the big clubs that were linked with him, potentially Chelsea more than anyone else, may end up going for Declan Rice instead, which might kind of dampen the interest in Bellingham till maybe push it back a year. So I get there's a lot of attention, there's always a lot of buzz because he's doing so well at the World Cup, but I'm still kind of convinced that come next season he'll probably still be a Dortmund player.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out where this is coming from, right? If this is a story leaked by Bellingham's agency to the press, then that gives me an indication that they would probably like a move. But like the wording that has also come out is that, and you have to always read between the lines, right? We both work in this industry. Again, we understand how and why things are worded a certain way. Is that there's always that little, every time anyone reports on it, there's always that little piece in it that says 130 to 150 million euros is difficult to do for Liverpool, right? So this could be an indication to me that this might actually come from Liverpool saying, we really want to sign this guy. We have gotten feedback that Bellingham would be interested, but we've also gotten feedback from Dortmund about a figure that we can't afford. This is what I'm reading with these news reports, right?
Do you know the really interesting thing about that as well is that if it is coming from Liverpool's side and they're trying to dampen the interest or dampen the kind of market value for Bellingham, we've seen in the past that from a Dortmund point of view it doesn't really work unless they're really struggling in terms of from a kind of negotiating point of view, as they did with Haaland, because obviously he had a release clause and there's no changing that. But I've seen with players in the past that Dortmund will set a price, they'll draw a line in the sand, and they'll sit there and wait until someone comes along and buys the player at that price.
Yeah, or they wait a year and even take less, right? Like they did with Sancho. They could have gotten more the first year. That price wasn't met. And then they said, okay, well, then they said to Sancho, next year you're allowed to leave for this price. And then they did it. They went from, we want 100 million plus for Sancho if he wants to move this year. And it has to be done by a certain date. Man United didn't meet that date. And tried to negotiate until the very end. And Dortmund said, well, you missed the date. It's done. Bye. They even had like a reporter camped out from Sky at Dortmund, and everyone was kind of laughing at him, right? This could very well happen here, where Dortmund say next year, you have until August 1st to do it at this price. And if you don't meet that price to this date, we're going to sit on it, and we're happy to take a little less next year, but we're going to keep the player. I think that is exactly what they're going to do. So if anyone is trying to lower the market value on the player next summer, good luck. I mean, absolutely good luck. Dortmund are a lot of things, but they're not bad at negotiating.
Yeah,
that's one thing they're not. They really know what to get for their players.
And even that example, there's actually quite some notable differences between Jadon Sancho and Jude Bellingham. The first one is the fact that I think the most pertinent thing is that when it came to Sancho, there was only really one buyer interested in buying him. Not to say that other clubs wouldn't have liked to have him at the club, but it was clear from the get-go that Manchester United wanted to sign him, and the likes of PSG, Real Madrid, Chelsea, whoever else, they already had their wide star players, so they didn't really need to spend a fortune on Sancho. So it was basically one club wanted them, and then one club was negotiating over when to sell them. And the key thing that happened there was that when Dortmund decided to hold off and not sell at a certain price, Manchester United just came back the next year with a lower price because there wasn't a bidding war there. The other thing as well is that Sancho was quite vocal. Well, maybe not officially, but even if unofficially, he wanted to move on. He'd done what he wanted to do at Dortmund. He was ready to get back to the Premier League, and you could tell even from watching him, even though he had a great record at Dortmund, don't get me wrong, he was a great player there. There was long periods in which, either through injury or lack of fitness, or even just the fact that his head was in the clouds or somewhere else, you could tell that it was affecting him. He wasn't very good at kind of hiding his disaffection at times about maybe not moving on. Jude Bellingham strikes me as a very, very different player. He's far more mature, far more rounded individual. Yeah. And you can tell that he actually seems to really appreciate playing at Dortmund a little more than... Not actually, I don't want to go so far as to say that Sancho didn't appreciate playing at Dortmund. Of course he did. But it just strikes me as though Bellingham is just not really knocking down the door, pushing for that move quite like Sancho did. So, and, if Dortmund held off this year and said we're not selling him until a certain point, I've no doubt that those same 3 or 4 clubs will still be interested, because he plays a position where there's always need for another midfielder.
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't actually be surprised to maybe add on to this a little bit that Dortmund go out and sign his brother Jude Bellingham. We just did a profile on him on Transfermarkt, right? It's part of the talents calendar that we do every year. And I wouldn't be surprised if Dortmund go and sign Jude Bellingham and say to Jude, give us another year so you can work on your brother. You guys can play together at the same club, and then we'll open the door for you, and we have a ready-made replacement in literally your brother.
Yeah, well, I mean...
already at the club, right?
Jude Bellingham's dad used to be a player in England as well. Maybe they could buy him as well and sign him and see if they can keep him for another year after that.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. We've seen that kind of stuff before. I mean, on a different level, because Jude Bellingham actually looks like a really good talent, right? But Bayern Munich, when they tried to fight off Real Madrid for Franck Ribéry, they signed Ribéry's brother to play for the second team, right? And that actually kept them quite happy. So this is actually a strategy that's been employed by clubs before.
Yeah, without a doubt. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see what happens, I suppose.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think this Bellingham rumor, I mean, obviously it is something that moves the masses on Twitter and elsewhere. So I'm pretty sure we're going to get daily updates all the way leading up to September 1st, I guess. So buckle in, people. We'll have another 10 months of this.